back online. We had some technical difficulties. Leviticus 13:11, bro. Another one I asked for was Exodus 29:14 and Matthew, right?
27.
Okay. Somebody get Leviticus 1 and 1.
First Peter 1 and 19.
Okay. You read that already for Peter?
I didn't get to finish this.
I finished that off.
This is 1 Peter 1 and 19. But with the precious blood of Yahweh Shai, as a lamb without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world, but was manifest in these last times for you.
Right?
Yeah. Read that out.
13, right? This is Hebrews 13:11. For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought unto the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burnt without the camp.
So the bodies of those beasts that were brought to the high priest, that were what? Brought for sin?
It says, whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burnt without the camp.
They're burned without the camp. So first, real quick, now I said the animals were brought, right? The bodies of those beasts. Leviticus 1 and 1.
Leviticus.
Because you gotta understand, because it's not like, oh, you just grab any lamb. Go over to the forest and grab a lamb and bring it over here. It wasn't like that. Go ahead.
Leviticus 1, verse 1. And the Lord called unto Moses and spake unto him out of the tabernacle of the congregation, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, If any man of you bring an offering unto the Lord, ye shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd, and of the...
Really get every word that you see there really slow.
Leviticus 1, verse 1.
No, start from 2. The second verse. Go to the second verse now, right?
Second verse.
Yeah.
Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, If any man of you bring an offering
If any man of you bring an offering, notice that man, go ahead.
unto the Lord, ye shall bring your offering of the cattle.
Stop. What does that sound like? It says, if you're going to bring an offering to the Lord, bring an offering of the cattle. Remember, I just said you just didn't go to the forest and grab any random animal.
Yeah.
So if it was coming from the cattle, what does that mean?
First lot.
It was coming from your own cattle, your own domestic animals.
Yeah. One of your best ones.
One of your own domesticated animals, representing man's own toil and man's own labor. And by you giving up that which you raised up, you are therefore surrendering yourself to the Most High. You're giving up that which you put forth to labor. So it wasn't like, that's a trick question for people now. So if you were offering this animal, where do you get the animal from? You just go in the forest and grab one? Some people might think that. Well, he's going in and grab a ram. Here you want a ram, here you are walking around looking for a damn ram to catch. So like that. It's an animal you gotta raise from your own flock, your own cattle. Some animal that you raised up with your own labor, your own toil, by giving that animal up to be sacrificed for the offering of sacrifice for sin, you are therefore surrendering yourself up to the Most High. Okay, go ahead.
The answer. Even of the herd and of the flock.
Of the herd and of the flock.
Verse.
Right? That's good on that. So you can go back to Hebrews 13 and 11.
This is Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 11. For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burnt without the camp. Wherefore, Yahushua also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate.
Yeah, again, bro, I'm sorry.
This is Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 11. For the bodies of those beasts whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burnt without the camp.
So the bodies of those beasts that are brought for a sacrifice to the high priest are burned without the camp. Now, why would it say without the camp? You got to put yourself back in that time. During that particular time, where were we? We were in the wilderness. We were camped out in the wilderness. We were not yet in our homeland. The temple was not built. So the temple, as a matter of fact, was actually a portable temple. It was actually portable. And each of certain tribes dwelled on certain sides of the temple. And wherever we would go in the wilderness, eventually we'll lay everything down, set everything up, and then eventually you'll give the animal to the high priest and they'll go on with that process. But it says without the camp because we was camping out in the land of Israel. We was camping out in the land of Israel, but those animals that had to be burnt without the camp. then it had to be burnt outside of the camp of Israel. So not in the place where your living quarters were, but rather outside. Go ahead, brother.
It says, wherefore Yahushua also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate.
Yahushua himself, that he will what for his own people?
It says that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate.
So Yahushua also, that he will sanctify the people by his own blood. So this is that sin offering will be sacrificed for the people for remission of sins. Yahushua's blood was sacrificed for the people for remission of sins. And just as that animal was sacrificed without the camp, or outside the camp of Israel, it will be the same thing with Yahushua. He suffered without the gate. Now what does that mean without the gate? Matthew?
27 and 30.
Yeah.
8?
Yeah, I think so. It's like God.
Oh. Yep, 33. This is Matthew chapter 27. I'm going to start at verse 32. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him,
Simon of Cyrene or Simon the Canaanite. Go ahead.
him they compelled to bear his cross. And when they were come unto a place called Golgotha, that is to say, a place of a skull.
That is to say the place of a skull. Golgotha, place of a skull. And that was outside of the land of Israel. Golgotha, also known as Calvary. So that's how Yahushua was offered without the camp. Just as how the animals for sacrifice was offered without the camp as well. So what you're seeing is Yahushua being a representation of the Lord. That's what the scripture tell you. That's what Yahushua scripture tell you what. Yahushua said, lo, it says in the volume of the book it is written of me. That's why how we know he's the physical embodiment of the word. So when these jackasses say, oh, everything in the Bible comes from Egypt and all that, they don't get all of this stuff about sacrifices and all of that. Go ahead, brother.
Yep. It says, they gave him vinegar to drink mingled with gall.
They gave him vinegar to drink mingled with gall. Now, Spirit had been going through this before. That's called an anodyne. A-N-O-D-Y-N-E. An anodyne is something that you give someone like a painkiller or a pain reliever. So Yahushua was being whipped, was being crucified. They wanted to give him that mixed, that drink of vinegar mixed with gall. The gall means the contents of the gallbladder, urine. But he refused that opiate. He refused it. Because Yahushua had to go through all of them sufferings for our sake. He had to feel them sufferings, man.
And when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink.
That's good right there. Go back to that.
This is Hebrews 13 and verse 12. It says, wherefore
You get
Yahushua...
that scripture where it says without the roots twice a day? That in Jude?
Hebrews 13 and 12, wherefore Yahushua also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered without the gate. Let us go forth therefore unto him without the camp, bearing his reproach.
So just as Simon of Cyrene went with him outside without the camp carrying his cross, we also got to go with him outside the camp carrying his cross as well. We're not physically bearing the cross, we're figuratively or spiritually bearing the cross, meaning what we're bearing over the sufferings or carrying over the sufferings that you got to take hold upon yourself, being that it's true. Go ahead, bro.
It says, for here we have no continuing city, but we seek one to come.
So here we have no continuing city. We don't have a city that continues. But guess what? We seek one to come. Why don't we have a continuing city? Because this world is to be destroyed. But we seek one to come. That's the kingdom of heaven. Go ahead.
By him therefore let us offer the sacrifice of praise to the Most High continually. That is the
So that's the offer that of sacrifice that we've been reading. Go ahead.
It says Hebrews 13:15. By him therefore let us offer the sacrifice of praise to the Most High continually.
Not the actual sacrifice of animals was the reason why this epistle was written. And they were still going on sacrifice. He said, man, listen, not the you go over the sacrifices of praise. Because remember, he's telling you how precious Yahushua's blood is in accordance to those animals. So those days is over. We gotta offer these sacrifices of praise, go ahead.
That is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. But to do good and to communicate, forget not. For with such sacrifices, the Most High is well pleased.
That's good. So let's get the book of Jude that Jude actually did.
Yep, Jude 1 and 12.
Yeah.
Jude 1 and 12. These are spots in your feast of charity.
Start up.
Sí, el de ahí en el primer piso lo apagué. El tercero apagué
10,
también.
verse 10.
Jude 1 and 10. But these speak evil of those things which they know not, but when they know naturally as brute beasts, in those things they corrupt themselves. Woe unto them! For they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Kor. These are
Korah is talking about Dathan, Korah, and Abiram in the book of Numbers. Which they were what? Rebellious. Just as Cain was. Go ahead.
these are spots in your feast
They
of
gotta
charity.
watch those rebellious Negroes. He says these are spots in your feast of charity. The feast of brotherly kindness. They're spots. In other words, they're blemishes. Go ahead.
When they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear,
When they feast with you, they feed themselves without fear. No true fear of Yahweh Shemel Shah. Go on.
clouds they are without water,
Right, clouds they are without water. Somebody give me the book of Ephesians 5:26. So it says they're clouds without water. Now you know, as a matter of fact, it's raining right now. And the rain that's coming down is coming out of the clouds, right? But it says they're clouds without water. Somebody give Ephesians the 5th chapter, the 26th verse.
This is Ephesians 5:26, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word.
With the washing of water by the word. So the word is likened unto water. So when it says these are clouds without water, in other words, what? They don't have the water, they don't have the knowledge within them. Go ahead.
It says that he might present it to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing.
There you go. Go ahead. Back to you, read.
But
Most of that? Yeah.
it says, but that it should be holy and without blemish.
Same thing was reading there. Go ahead, bro.
clouds they are without water,
Right, so they're clouds without water. Those are just clouds without water, just drifting, but they don't have the knowledge within them. Go ahead.
carried about of winds,
Ephesians 4:14. Carried about of winds. What does that mean, carried about of winds? Carried about, as a matter of fact, earlier it was a damn plastic bag that just kept going in the wind, going in circles around us. Go ahead.
It's Ephesians 4:14, that we henceforth be no more children tossed to and fro, and carried about with every wind of doctrine.
So that we be not children tossed to and fro, carried about by every wind of doctrine. So those are the winds. So clouds without water, carried about of winds. So when you see clouds in the sky, you see clouds in the sky sometimes, and they don't got no water and it's not raining. But guess what? You see the winds carrying them about. Don't you look in the sky and see clouds moving but no water coming out of them? But that's what they're like. They're like clouds in the sky drifting, but without knowledge within them. And the wind is talking about the winds of doctrine. They're carried about, so they're clouds in the sky without water, knowledge of the Most High, because they're being carried about by different winds of doctrine. Right?
It says, by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive.
By the sleight of men. A so-called magician functions by what? The sleight of hand. In other words, they use deception.
clouds they are without water, carried about of winds, trees whose fruit withereth,
Right, they're trees whose fruit wither. It shows you, Howard Shah cursed that fig tree was representation of a man. So they're trees whose fruit wither. The fruit is withering. In other words, they don't have, to tell you, that you may bear fruit and that your fruit, I'm not quoting verbatim, but the fruit, read that part again? I'm going to take my time. That you will bear fruit, your fruit will remain. Those are not fruit that remain. Those are fruit that wither. Right?
without fruit, twice dead,
Without fruit, twice dead. So they're twice dead. So in 1 minute they were dead to sin. They came into this truth. They were dead to their own ways. They were dead in that manner, but then eventually they were twice dead because they're gonna be dead physically. They're twice dead. First they came into the truth, dead to who they once were, dead to sin because they accepted the faith. But then again, they became twice dead because eventually they're going to die naturally. They're going to naturally perish because they didn't take over the truth that lead to everlasting life. So they were out the root twice dead. Go ahead.
plucked up by the roots, raging waves of the sea foaming out their own shame.
Raging waves, you ever see the waves raging in the sea, you see the foamy type of water? They're like raging waves in the sea, foaming at the mouth. It's that foaming at the mouth?
Foaming out their own shame.
Foaming out their own shame. So it's comparing all of these unstable things, all of these destitute things in nature to a human being. So that you see raging waves and foam in the water. They're like raging men foaming out what? Their own shame. Right?
Wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever.
They're like a wandering star to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. So they're like a star in the sky that's wandering. But that star in the sky that's wandering, it's only going to be reserved for the darkness forever. It's not going to come down to the earth and just sit right in front of you. That's the purpose of the stars, to be out in the sky. So a star that's wandering is reserved for the blackness of darkness forever. But that's them. They're not meant to get the knowledge. Go to that?
No, that was it.
This is another thing I had in my mind. Romans 11, about the wild olive tree. Get into that real quick.
This is Romans 11, verse. I'm gonna start at verse 16. But if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also.
Start up a couple verses up.
This is Romans 11 and 13. For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify my office. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, then the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy,
Paul says the first fruit be holy. Read that part again? Sorry.
for if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy.
Go ahead.
And if the root be holy, so are also the branches. And if some,
that first fruit is going to Yahushua. Go ahead.
and if some of the branches be broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, wert grafted in among them.
So some of the branches be broken off. Thou, read that part again?
And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, wert grafted in among them.
So the branch be broken off, and thou like a wild olive tree were grafted in among them. So you have an olive tree. But eventually, let's say that the branches of the olive tree get broken off. First we gotta find out who the olive tree talking about. Jeremiah 11 should be Jeremiah 11 chapter. These people that I've called you to be a green olive tree. Let's go to find that. Green olive tree. Give me 1 second. It's in the book of Jeremiah.
11 and 16.
It might be a year. You got something? Man.
This is from Jeremiah chapter 11, and verse 16.
Man.
The Lord called thy name a green olive tree.
So he said, wait a minute, the Lord called thy name to be a green olive tree. So the Lord called the children of Israel to be not just a wild olive tree, but to be a green olive tree. A tree that's green is a tree that's healthy, a tree that's flourishing.
It says fair and of goodly fruit.
A fair tree with goodly fruit. Man.
With the noise of a great tumult, he hath kindled fire upon it, and the branches of it are broken.
So with the noise of a great tumult, a tumult is a sign of war. So with the noise of a great tumult, the branches thereof are broken, right? So that noise of a great tumult was talking about what? When other nations came to the children of Israel and took them down. Because remember, the children of Israel had transgressed against the Heavenly Father. And one thing that the Heavenly Father always did was always bring other nations against us. So that noise of a great tumult, the branches thereof were broken. Also, when you go back in the ancient world in the time of war, what other nations would do, they would take over other nations. They would cut down all their trees. These things they would do. Not only that, an olive tree was a slow-growing tree. And it only really grew in the time of, it was a slow-growing tree and it took years for it to grow into maturity. So it would be best to grow in a time of peace. After all, it was a time of war. Would that the tree be broken down? Of course, so it would be best to grow during a time of peace. That's why olive trees have always been associated with peace. If somebody said, I want to stretch out an olive branch to this individual, it means they want to stretch out what? A symbol of peace. Have you ever heard that term before? That's related to an olive tree was a slow growing tree. It took years and years and years in order for it to grow to full maturity. So it was best to grow during peacetime. That's the reason why olive trees are associated with peace. Go ahead. Listen.
Yeah, precept. This is Hosea chapter 14, verse 5. I will be as the dew unto Israel,